Just last week, I bought 4,000 shares of SoFi, and this week I intend on buying up to 3,000 shares of SoFi. And in this video, I want to explain exactly why I'm buying and what my plan is to do with all of these shares. Let's jump right in. Okay, so if you couldn't tell already from my setup, I am still not home. I'm still traveling in a very poorly lit hotel room at the moment. This is a very off the cuff video, not a lot of preparation or script to this video, but I wanted to just jump on and share some thoughts around the news that I've been seeing and around the trades that I've been making. I made this tweet around my purchases, and the purchases of the 4,000 shares are in the form mostly of cash secured puts. About 3,000 of them were just exercised cash secured puts that I got assigned on. And I chose to get assigned on because I wanted to own the shares. And then the remaining 1,000 shares was just a market order around the 1440 price range. My cost basis, when you consider the premiums, is around the mid $14 price range for those 4,000 shares. Now, the reason why I'm purchasing so heavily is because I'm also making money to the upside by writing covered calls against these shares in the case of a big earnings pop because the premiums are going to be higher on earnings. And we know that SoFi often tends to run up in anticipation of earnings. And I think these earnings are going to be no different with spectacular results. And I'm going to make a video probably when I get back home. So look out for it next week around my expectations for earnings. I just don't have the time to make it right now. But a lot of what I'm seeing is very positive for SoFi. So stay tuned for that video where I actually jump into the numbers. Now, in terms of the trade that I'm making this week for the up to 3,000 shares, I already have 1,000 of them in cash secured puts at $16 a share, and I collected premiums on that. I even made a tweet about it last week where I just publicly said, "Hey, I'm going to be buying SoFi at $16 a share," and I think I collected like a buck 20 in premium or something to that effect. I also have 2,000 shares in the form of calls for $15 strike price that I can exercise next Friday. Now, of course, if the stock is not trading above $15 by Friday, then those expire worthless. I'll probably just end up buying on the open market or do more cash secured puts. The very likely scenario is probably that I'll buy another 1,000 shares on Friday after that $16 cash secured put gets assigned. But I could be picking up as many as 3,000 shares this week, which brings the grand total to 7,000 shares in the last 2 weeks alone. SoFi is now over 32% of my total portfolio. I had the biggest SoFi concentration out of all of the SoFi Weekly crew back when I had a 20-25% allocation, something to that effect. And now it's grown significantly on top of that. And the reason why, very simply put, is because I continue to be bullish on the prospects of this company, where I think they're going from here. I think the story hasn't changed very much. I think the company continues to execute, and much of the tailwinds lie ahead for 2025 from both a macro perspective, but also a company execution perspective. I think it's going to be a great year. But of course, these shares are ones that I am writing against in the form of covered calls that they can get taken away. And the reason I'm doing this is number one, to take advantage of the fact that SoFi has dropped into the $14 price range on this dip. Number two, to take advantage of the high premiums during earnings time. And number three, I want to not put any pressure on my core position if we have a huge spike up on earnings. And so I'm playing around with this secondary position. Now, we're heading into a big earnings result for SoFi on January 27th. There's a few pieces of news that I've been seeing over the past couple of days that I just wanted to very quickly run through in this video. The first and foremost is, of course, that the TGL Golf League has started out with some amazing impressions. TGL's opening night reached 3.2 million unique viewers, and these were just the opening matches, right? This was the most watched event that night, beating out the NBA, beating out college basketball, and we have bigger names coming up to play over the next couple of weeks. I think Tiger Woods is scheduled to play very shortly. SoFi's logo was plastered everywhere around this thing, and just overall, it's going to be amazing brand awareness. But of course, keep in mind with regards to TGL that all of this is going to contribute to Q1 numbers, as Q4 has already been in the books for a couple weeks now. The main driver of SoFi stock over the past couple of weeks has been macro. As is with the rest of the market, it's been mostly macro driven moves. Briefly, we actually entered extreme fear territory on the macro across the board. We have the inauguration coming up soon. We have tariff threats. We have policy adjustments with the changing administration. And in addition to all of that, we have uncertainty around what the Fed is going to end up doing. I saw reports, I think it was Bank of America, that they were saying that they weren't even going to cut at all this year. Of course, the Fed came out a couple of months ago and they said, hey, we're going to do two rate cuts in 2025. And the market took a dip as a result of that. The data is going to end up dictating what ends up happening. PPI came in cooler than expected today. That was good news. We're going to see what CPI does this week. If it comes in cool, then we're off to the races. And I think we do get a quick bounce back from here. In terms of SoFi specific stuff, I mean, we had dark mode. That's official. Not a huge deal at all. Very, very minor news, but still very good because it's a highly anticipated feature. So, from a user perspective, it's going to be a good value add. We had Citibank today raise their price target on SoFi to $18 from $12.50 ahead of earnings. Again, expect a lot of analysts to be adjusting their price targets either upwards or downwards ahead of earnings. So as they're revisiting their models. And don't forget, with this dip in the $14 range, we also had insiders who purchased like in the $16 range a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think you should be looking at this and saying that this company is now going to be falling or it's starting a new downtrend. I think it's mostly macro chop, and we're probably going to get bounce off this and go back higher because overall 2025 looks like a more bullish year than a bearish year from just everything that's playing out. You have more tailwinds than you have headwinds. And not only did we have insiders buy, we also had politicians buy. We had the chair of the House Oversights and Accountability Committee buying $30,000 worth of SoFi. Now, of course, for a politician, $30,000 is not really a lot of money to be plowing into SoFi. But to me, what this signaled is it signaled more price discovery from bigger groups of people, more influential groups of people, which is obviously a positive for the stock. We also see institutional numbers going up for SoFi. And overall, it seems as though it's getting more traction than before. But of course, with that traction, you also have a cohort of people who are now for the first time going short on SoFi. I mean, I just saw recently, I saw Ram going short on SoFi. I saw this other guy, Yaman, who creates content mostly for Tesla, going short on SoFi. And I found that really interesting because you have this business that for the past couple of years has been facing real headwinds: student loan moratorium, the interest rate environment, integration of Galileo, getting their flywheel up and running. So much of that process has been difficult. And now you're coming into a year where all of the pieces seem to fit together perfectly for this business. And now you're going short. It doesn't really make sense to me. But again, I'm trying to follow where the big money is. Institutions are coming in, politicians are coming in, analysts are raising their price target. This business is executing. I just saw also this news earlier today, Trump to have an executive order that's going to allow banks to custody Bitcoin. Which is obviously positive because we talked about this on the SoFi Weekly podcast a couple weeks ago. What this Trump administration might mean for SoFi as pertains to Bitcoin, because essentially by being a chartered bank, they weren't allowed to operate in crypto. And as we know, SoFi is very much pro crypto as a company. Anthony Noto holds Bitcoin himself. He's advocated for Bitcoin in the past. So anything regarding crypto deregulation is good for SoFi. But the main point of contention that we had on the SoFi Weekly was a matter of when, not if. And it seems as though the new administration is serious about making these changes very quickly in their first year or even in their first week in this case. And so this is obviously going to be positive for SoFi because if we have SoFi in 2025 getting crypto back, then that's obviously going to be a big positive. So long story short, the Spark Notes version of this video is that I'm very bullish on SoFi with everything that I've been seeing. Earnings is in a couple of weeks on January 27th. I think that they're going to blow the numbers out of the water. We're going to see, of course, they have a trend of doing that. And everything that we've been seeing for SoFi, from their initiatives internally to external factors to the macro, all points me into this direction of being massively bullish for the company, which is why I'm accumulating as many shares as I possibly can before earnings. And I'm going to be writing covered calls against that to capitalize on those high premiums because we have a time of high volatility. Stay tuned next week. I should be back to normal my recording setup, and I'm going to try to dedicate some time to make an actual earnings estimates video for you next week. This was a very off the cuff video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope some of these thoughts were helpful for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.